What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast live in the studio tonight with my guest, Casey Thompson. Casey is a professional wrestler, has his own podcast, so we're going to get into a bunch of stuff. For the guys and girls watching, all my viewers, we might get into some wrestling terms that you're not familiar with. We'll do our best to kind of square it away with the wrestling lingo as we get into it. So just as a fair note to that. So Casey, let's just go back to the beginning. How did this whole thing start?
First of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
Boy, it started back when, go back into, to really get into it, you had to go all the way back to my parents back in Michigan in the 70s. They would go around, this is even before I was born, they'd go around in the Sheik's territory, the original Sheik in Michigan. They'd go to all the matches and everything. And then as time moved on, we moved to Florida. I think I was probably about 10 years old, and they were watching some wrestling. I think it was on the Madison Square Garden Network, old WWF stuff. And I was like, oh, that stuff sucks. So I went into my room or whatnot. And then one day, the TV was on, and it was Championship Wrestling from Florida with Gordon Soley, Dusty Rhodes, Blackjack Mulligan, all those guys. And I heard Dusty and Blackjack and Gordon on, and I was just hooked. And from that day on, that's what I wanted to do. By 12 years old, we were already going to the matches, and I was actually helping set up the ring with an old wrestler named Gordon Nelson. And then the promoter from that town where I lived in Fort Myers, Florida at the time, was Coach John Heath. He would send me posters. I would poster the town. And then as time grew on, we ended up moving to Orlando. And I still would tell everyone, I want to be a wrestler. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, kid, sure, kid. And then the school I was at had a little poster up for a little independent show that was going to be across the street at the Central Florida Fairgrounds in Orlando, Florida. And it said, you want to become a professional wrestler? And I was like, hey, Dad, look. And he's like, okay. And I wasn't even old enough to drive yet when I had my first lesson. He took me over, and I trained for a year with the old territory guy by the name of Golden Boy Jerry Gray. And then from there, I was on a rocket ship. That's all I did was just wrestle.
Sure. So can you kind of walk us through like wrestling school? Like obviously we hear the Ric Flair story about how he trained and they make him run up and down the stairs and all the conditioning and the cardio. Is that true? Is that like, it's pretty intense for the most part, right? Like kind of walk us through like a wrestling school, like a day in the life of.
I mean, mine wasn't as intense as that. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I ran wrestling schools that were that intense. So mine, I just we would wrestle train like 2 days a week, and we didn't have a facility. So wherever the show was for that night, we'd get there like a couple hours before. We'd set up the ring and then get in there and train. And I was fortunate enough that the guy who ran the promotion, Jerry Gray, he lived about 2 blocks from me. So he'd like call me and say, hey, what you doing? I'm like, nothing. He said, want to come over and work out? He had a big ring in the backyard. I'm like, yeah. So we get in there and go in there for hours at a time and just train and everything. So mine wasn't as like that, but when I ran my wrestling school, and it was 500 squats before we even get in there, doing sprints in the parking lot, and you name it. It was, we had guys that were professional athletes, football players, all this stuff that would be like run them off in a day. One workout, they would be ready to leave. And the thing is back then, I was doing everything that they were doing. So if I said, let's do 100 squats, I was right there next to them doing 100 squats. We were doing the sprints. I was doing the sprints with them and trying to be the first one back, to win. So, I was leading by an example. So, it was good. We trained a lot of guys, and my partner that he actually paid for the school and everything. I was just his tag team partner, and I was training everyone. And
Okay.
he's like, "Oh, you could have quit beating up everyone. You're running everybody off." I'm like, you know what? They don't deserve to be in the business. And
Right.
I think that's the uh, a big detach that nowadays that they don't do that. Back in my day, we protected the business where
Sure.
if you didn't deserve to be in the business by showing respect, work, paying your dues, different things like that, that you would just, someone would go and beat you up and either make you tune you up, straighten you out, make you go around the right path to do the right things, or just beat you up until you
Sure.
quit.
So
So
I was
which
going
which
to
was
ask,
fine with me too.
yeah. So I was going to ask this question a little bit later, but since we're on the topic, um, social media is very prevalent now, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of in your face. How do
yeah,
you feel about the wrestlers bringing their personal lives outside of the ring and kind of mixing it together? Obviously, the Young Bucks do being the elite, and they kind of bring you backstage, and it's all their antics and all. They basically put it out for everybody to see. How do you feel about that? Is that like, because the wrestling business was always kind of the kayfabe? You stayed in
right. I
character.
mean,
You kind of how is it now? Do you feel differently about it, or are you accepting of it? Or
everything evolves. Wrestling's evolved, and the with social media and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely going to be different. Um, I believe a lot of those guys didn't pay their dues. I believe a lot of the guys, even in WWE's, never paid their dues. I was talking on our podcast the other day about how Undertaker has a podcast and his wife was in it. And they had,
Mhm.
um, I think it was Bubba Ray Dudley, and they were talking about how they lived in their cars. They would, basically, they were doing anything to make it in the make it in the wrestling business. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I know these kids now. They don't understand what it was like when I started. The locker rooms we had compared to what they have now." And I was like, I'm like, seriously? She was in arenas. She came out of a diva search. She didn't pay her dues. So a lot of people's not paid their dues. So a lot of the old time people are like, yeah, these kids, they're
Right.
not paying their dues. You're not starving to be in the business. You're not in the business because you love it. You're in the business because you're making a lot of money.
Sure.
And that's the difference between all these people. As the young bucks, um, you know, it's like I think it's the whole social media thing. They're like Jackass 2.0, where they, integrate all that stuff in there. Then they do some stuff with
That's
their mom and stuff like that. As you can see by the ratings, no one really cares about that, I guess. That's
right.
what it seems like because their ratings are horrible.
Yeah, because they had so it was funny because like back in the day when they were part of New Japan, that's where it started, right? When they were doing
Right,
the Bullet Club. So it was then Kenny Omega, Hangman, and they just started shooting behind the scenes stuff. It was basically like
right,
a camera in the room, and it was them hanging out on the road in Japan, and that's
right.
kind of how it started. But it kind of give an interesting perspective on the workouts, what they do, how they live, how they eat, how they like all stay together, how so it kind of gives like a behind the scenes sense
Yeah,
to it, but at the same point it kind of gives away the secrets, right? It's kind of
right.
it
I
shows
mean,
them under like
unfortunately, everything's been given away by, you go back in the day, you had a group of guys that tried to expose the business. I think it was uh, Bob Orton Jr., the Great Malenko, um, Ronnie Garvin, a bunch of guys like that because they're trying to get black fly ball by one of the promoters. And then you had Eddie Mansfield on the big 2020 where he cut his head with a razor blade. And then you had Vince McMahon who didn't want to have to pay for all the state commissions, said, no,
mhm,
we're entertainment. We're not wrestling. And then they've given it away. And now they even have a show where they tell how all the storylines are a
right,
Netflix show that how shows behind the scenes how everything is evolves and how they so yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. That's what people want nowadays is they want this know about what they want to know
right,
everything. And I
sure,
get that. I mean, even my podcast, I kind of based a lot of that around that we tell a lot of stuff. It's myself and my co-host Kevin Kelly. He was the announcer. commentator for
Yeah.
WWE, New Japan, AEW.
Hmm.
So we tell our experiences from our perspective, from what we have went through and dealt with from behind the scenes and everything like that. So, and that's what people want to hear, is they want to hear, like, I equate it to back in the day when Howard Stern was real big. And they were doing stuff, and someone would be messing around. He's like, "Oh, stop it, stop it! People don't want to hear what's going on behind the scenes and this and that. Let's get back to the show." No, that's what people really want to do, is
Right.
they want to hear behind the scenes. Like when you go to a concert, what's the ultimate goal? Is to get a backstage pass, to get back there to see what it's like and everything. That's what everyone wants. And so, yeah, I see that's how, when wrestling evolves and, grows, that's what, you're going to cater to what the landscape of what the society is now. So, I mean, I
Right.
understand it, so, I
Well,
mean, if it's done properly, there's should be no problem with it.
yeah. Because a lot of the wrestlers now, like Stone Cold has his podcast, Undertaker has
Yeah.
his podcast, and they kind of bring the stars on and all the celebs and stuff like that. But when you get like a low key one, like a really interesting one to me is Jim Cornette, right? Because
Yeah.
he hates the guys that don't keep the secret of the industry. He
Yeah.
is like holds that sacred. So when you
Yeah.
hear his podcast, he MFs all these guys, right? They're like
Oh,
they so it's amusing, but at the same time, it's like that's an old school guy that really cherished the wrestling business, as
yeah.
opposed to So it's an interesting perspective. Now, with your career, when you started, you go to wrestling school. Did you always stay in the States, or did you go to Mexico at all? Did you go to Japan? Did you tour as a
Um,
younger wrestler? Did you just mainly?
I started in the States, in Florida, and then that was 1988.
Okay.
So I wrestled all over then in the States. Then I think like 1990, I was doing TV for WCW. And then 91, I was doing TV for WWF. And but WCW, I was on there. I was a regular every week for a couple of years, and then I would bounce back and forth between both of them. Now I've been all over this. I've been overseas.
Okay.
I've been overstayed in Puerto Rico. Wrestled in there for Carlos Colon, which was a brutal, rough territory.
Hmm.
Um, been all over South America, Central America, places like that. So
Okay.
I've been all over the place. I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel some.
Awesome. So now, when you got your break into WCW first, how did that come about? Did they come to you? Did you ask them to be a part of it? Did you have a tryout? Like, how was that process?
No, I mean back then, man, I was young. I was young into the business, and they needed guys to do and enhancement work on TV. So two of my buddies were going up, so they um, are always looking for guys that could do a good, go up and do a good job, basically.
Hmm.
So they brought me up. I was smaller then. I was only like about 200, about 200 pounds. So,
Okay.
and they're like, and the guy who booked everyone was a old guy by the name of Jody Hamilton, which was an assassin.
Okay.
And he was like, "Oh, you gotta get bigger, kid. Gotta get bigger, kid." So, and I was trying to get bigger, and um, so what I would do is I'd go out there and whoever I wrestle, and like, hey, I need to take a couple crazy bumps. That way, people would react to it. The boys
Sure.
would react to it, and then they'd have to bring me back because oh man, he took the really good bumps for me, this and that. So I mean, I was taking like backdrops over the top rope to the floor. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff back then. And so they keep on bringing me back and bringing me back, and then going up to WWF, I just rode with two of my buddies, two brothers that were booked on. It was like a double shot, Pensacola and then Biloxi, Mississippi.
Okay.
So I figure worst case scenario, it's not costing me anything. Get to try to network, make some connections, and then go and get some free catering, get
Sure.
some decent food, which is
Right.
nothing like it is nowadays.
Yeah.
So the second day, I didn't do nothing the first day, because they were full. They had everyone they needed and everything. And the second day, one of the agents back, his name was Tony Gurria. He's like, "Can anyone do Legion of Doom's finish?" Which was, You go on their top,
Mhm.
sort of like playing chicken, the doomsday, where he
Yeah.
clotheslines you off the top of the shoulders. And he's like, Tony's asking, can anyone do that finish? Can anyone do that finish? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. They're like, okay, you're gonna wrestle Legion of Doom, you and I think it was Bob Bradley. And I'm like, oh, I'm not even booked on the show. He's like, there you are now. He's like, okay, okay. And
Right.
so he walked away, and I looked at everyone and said, what's their finish move? And they're like, you don't know? I'm like, no, I don't know. But, I knew I could do it. I wasn't worried
Right.
about it.
Sure.
And so they're like, hey, listen, we're going to put our head under you, and we're going to squeeze your calf, give you an Iggy. Basically, just do a calf raise, and you'll pop up on animals' shoulders, and then Hawk could come off the top, give you the clothesline. You don't need to do anything. We'll push your legs up and everything. But I was the type of person, because I always wanted to take good bumps, look good, and stuff like that, kind of stand out. I like always would do a little extra. So I actually pushed off of animal off of Joe's head, and I ended up doing 1, 2, and 3 landed on my belly, and
Okay.
it was on the scissor reel going into SummerSlam that year, WrestleMania, and everything. They had that highlight on all the highlight reels and everything. After that, I was wrestling for them. Anytime they're in the Southeast, I
Okay.
was wrestling for them. So it was, and I was 18 years old.
Right.
So I mean, they would rent your car, they'd pay for your hotel. Back in that day, you can get a hotel with no ID or anything, and everyone just put the name Matt Burns down, because it was like, how many
Mhm.
hotels have been ruined? And they're like, who did that? Matt Burns.
Right.
That's the name everyone used, just like the gimmick name. And so, but I wasn't old enough to rent a car. So the WWF would send down a voucher. Basically, it's a WWF credit card to rent it in their name for me. And
Okay.
so, that was going on for a while. Then one of the brand new town cars got trashed. And so, that was that for a little while. But I remember Tony Gurria was going around guys saying, listen, we like for you guys, you guys, the underneath guys, the enhancement guys, to get a hotel about $40, $50 a night, which this is in the 90s. So, you
Right.
know, you can get, it's equivalent to going like a, Quality Inn,
Yeah.
comfort suite, something like that. But we stayed at the Marriott. Anywhere everyone else was staying is where we stayed at.
Okay.
And I mean, my floor, I was on the same floor as Hogan, Savage, and all them. And those guys, and they're like, yeah, we like to get like a mid-sized car in your rental. We got the town cars, Cadillacs, all that. And I don't know, for whatever reason, they never said anything to me. I just handed my receipts in. They're like, oh, no problem. And I remember the first time I went to hand my receipts in, an old time enhancement job guy, Mike Jackson from Alabama, is like, hey kid, how you turning these receipts in? What's your? I'm like, because they paid you gas, they reimbursed you everything. He's like, no, no,
Mhm.
no. He said, you're going to do this. He says, you're going to tell them you're going to go off of mileage, because they pay you more for the mileage than if you pay you straight up the gas. And then you're going to extend your miles further, this and that. Next thing you know, I was like, you know, turned in my receipts and everything, and I'm getting a big fat stack of cash. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So, and then they would pay me because I would bring up guys. I would bring the whole carload up. So I'd fill the car up with good workers. They are happy, and I was making good money. So I was like, all right, this is, this can't beat it. This is good,
Mhm.
so, but
So in the level of like, so the WWF, right? So you come in as a worker. What gets you to that next level with them? Like what like makes you stand out to say, okay, this kid has something? Is there like
I
a
mean,
talent scout, or like how does that work? Do you just
no, I
show up
mean,
every night?
it's different. Yeah, it's different now. I mean, um, back then when I first started, I wasn't ready for the next level, and it took about 5 years, 5 to 10 years to where everything was kicking on every cylinder properly.
Hmm.
So um, and it was just like I had, a lot of, basically one of my friends, a buddy of mine, D'Lo Brown, was like, hey man, I talked to Johnny A, John Laurinaitis. You're gonna have a dark match. Actually, Kevin Kelly is one of the guys who was, my podcast partner. He
Hmm.
was booking guys to bring him in for, dark matches, tryouts, and stuff like that. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with the talent. A lot of it
Okay.
has to do with being at the right place, the right time, having that look at what's in their mind. And I'll give you an example. I've seen it firsthand when we were in for WCW. We're in Center Stage in Atlanta, which is a shithole venue of all. I mean, it's freezing cold. It's
Right.
small, dingy. So Mark Merrill, which turned out to be Johnny B. Bad, he was booked the same way I was, to just do TV, do job matches on TV. He walked by, Dusty walked out of the booking office, seen him, and was like, look at that kid. Doesn't know if he could work or anything, has no clue. And you know what? I'm gonna have a interview tomorrow. Come in and see me. He was late to the interview, ended up getting a job because he seen Mark Merrill and said, he looks like Johnny B. Bad, and he got a contract just because
Right.
he walked out the door. Dusty seen him, and it was like, boom, just clicked.
Okay.
So a lot of it is not even
Sure.
having the talent, because when I was in my like prime, when I was like, okay, I'm ready, I'm confident, I can get in there with anybody, do anything. I was, everything was from head to toe, A to Z, everything was in line. I was in shape, I was big, I was, had color, my gear was good, everything. Um, I had plenty of dark matches, but it just wasn't nothing. They used me all the time, and I wrestled a
Right.
lot, and stuff like that. They always kept me in mind and stuff like that, but it wasn't like just something, and it wasn't my ability, because my ability was good. It's just
Mhm.
it's just, like how,
Right.
you've seen those bands that are really good. You're like, oh, you should get to the next level. You should be good. It just doesn't
Right.
happen.
Sure.
There's just no rhyme or reason why, but it just is what it is.
What now? Not to put you on the spot, but what did you feel was the better company to work for out of the big two?
I mean, it goes through different stages and phases. And first, when I started WCW, WWF was better, and then at one point WCW is better,
Mhm.
because WCW. I'll put it this way: I made more money with WCW,
Okay.
because during 1996 the Olympics was in Atlanta, for the Summer Olympic Games. So, that's where their hub is was in Atlanta. So basically we do Atlanta one day, and we always do a double shot. And then the next day you're within a couple hundred miles. It could be in Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, wherever. But because it was in Atlanta, the Olympics, it means everything's gone, all the production, all the cameras. So because TBS was so big in sports,
Mhm.
also mainstream sports. So what they did is they um, moved their whole operation down to Orlando, Florida, to Disney MGM Studios,
Okay.
and used all their production and everything. So they built a sound stage and all that. And so
Okay.
basically, and WCW has so many syndicated programs that there's matches that I've never seen before that they use just strictly overseas or this or there.
Okay.
And so we would wrestle 3 or 4 shows a day, and they would wrestle um, 3 weeks, 3 weeks straight every was it every 3 months. So we do 3 weeks straight, 21 days straight every 3 months, wrestling 3 or 4 shows. And the booker was Kevin Sullivan. And Kevin Sullivan I've known Kevin since I started when I was 15 years old. He was a buddy of
Yeah.
mine. So when they first got in there, they said, yeah, come to the hotel. So, and his crew was, Kevin was the booker, Eric Bischoff the president. Then you had Kevin
Okay.
Sullivan, which was the head booker. Then you had Paul Orndorff, assistant booker, Terry Taylor, assistant booker, and then agents were like Arn Anderson, Jimmy Hart, and might have been a couple more. But Paul Orndorff was the one who was booking the TV guys.
Hmm.
So Paul basically he took over Jody Hamilton's job. with all the other jobs he was doing too. So Paul's like, "Hey, you're in Florida, right?" Because he knew I was friends with Kevin. We call him Shorty or the Devil. And he's like, "You're friends with Shorty, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's a really good friend of mine." Kevin's like, "We're all standing outside the hotel," and he's like, "You know what? You know a bunch of guys." I said, "Yeah, I know everyone." And he's like, I'm gonna call you. You book all the guys for me now. We're just gonna have one person do it. That way, I know they're all good. It was really strange. He's like, good looking guys that know how to work, good attitude, good Christian boys. And I'm like, okay, wrestling good Christian boys, no problem, Paul. And Kevin told, Paul would book everyone. Basically, Terry Taylor and Mike Graham would put everyone in the matches and all that. So he told Terry, he's like, "Hey, Casey's here to work. Make sure you work him." So I'd wrestle. If there was 4 shows, I wrestled on 3 or 4 of those shows that day. For 21 days straight. So, and years ago, we started off like at a $150 match, and WCW would pay you extra. If you wrestled once, you got the $150. You wrestled 2, you get another $150. But actually, years ago, it was you wrestled once, you got $150. Any additional matches were $75. WWF was $150, but you got your money on a check from World Championship Wrestling, had Ted Turner's signature on it, and you got it like 2 weeks later. It was just in the regular rotation for payroll. WWF, you would get your money right then, you get cash. And they were $150, but they paid all your expenses, paid my hotel, paid my gas, everything. So go down the road, years down the road. Now it's different. I was getting paid, I think it had a lot to do with Kevin. I was getting paid $500 a match. So basically, I was on the pay structure. A lot of guys were still getting $150 or $250, depending who they were. I was getting the $500. Basically, if you weren't under contract, and it was like you got a nightly deal, you got either $500 or $750 a match. And I got the $500 a match. So if I'm working 4 times in one day, I'm making $2,000 for that day. In the late '90s. So I was making a good living. 21 days a month, every 3 months, and then still I would go in there and do different things, doing Nitro or Thunder or whatnot. When they're doing WCW Worldwide, I would go and travel and stuff like that. So it was I was able to live off of it, so I was happy.
Sure, absolutely. Now this is the era now you're moving into, like when Nitro becomes kind of a big thing, competing with Monday Night Raw. So you have, the Monday Night Wars, right? On that scale now, I've never been obviously in the business. I've read articles, I've heard interviews and talk. Was the money like running free? Because a lot of people were saying that Ted Turner was just paying everybody absurd amounts of money to keep them. Was that true? Like, was there like, how did that go about? Like, how did
they had guaranteed money?
Okay.
Which was never before. Was never before. They had a guaranteed pay. So, and I think Hall and Nash had that thing where if anyone else got paid more, I forget there's a certain term for it. Basically, if someone came in and got paid more than them, they had to up their pay to that amount. So they'd be like the top paid guys under Hogan.
Okay.
So, but Hogan's contract was crazy. He got a percentage of the pay-per-view. He got, there were so many things written into it. But no, money wasn't freely given. It was they locked you in where you didn't want to go anywhere else. You were wrestling less days a month, traveling less, but making more money. So I mean, guys that's been wrestling for a while, that's been, we're on the road sometimes 300 days a year. Now you're on the road 150 days a year, like the top guys, or 100 days a year, but making the money for the 300. Which one are you going to take?
Right. Sure.
So, that's why they all stuck around. And then when it was bought out, some guys were under contract with AOL, not Turner.
Okay.
So the guys who sat out like Hogan, Hall, and Nash, Goldberg, they still had a couple years of their contract and get paid to sit at home, and they got
Mhm.
paid from AOL. So they're like,
So
no, we're not gonna let you buy us out. We're gonna sit here and just. That's why when Vince bought it, he didn't get all the guys, but like
right.
Sting and guys like that, because they weren't under a Turner contract; they're under an AOL contract.
Okay. So when they brought Flair back in, right? That was kind of the big one, right? They already had the Giant, who was obviously the Big Show. He was wrestling there. There were a lot of guys that came in through that era. Were there any of
Sure.
them that like stood out to you that were like, that when they came in, they were really like, wow, this is like a big thing for us? Was Macho Man one of them? Was like that? Like,
I was there when Hogan came in the first
okay,
time, and everything started becoming feeling much bigger then. And then Macho Man came after that, and it was just like you could tell that you're starting to go on a ride. You better just hold on because it's gonna, it's not gonna
right.
last forever. But yeah, I remember when Hogan came in, it was like, okay, things are changing now.
Now, in that era, right? So Hogan comes in, the NWO starts, right? It's kind of the whirlwind of wrestling. It kind of
Sure.
changes the face of who's a bad guy and who's a good guy.
Yeah.
They were obviously bad guys, they were heels, but they were winning, right? People were still cheering for Hogan, right? So it was kind of that weird type of vibe.
Right.
Like they had it with Austin in WWE where he was a bad guy, but people still loved him. So that kind of
Sure.
era was changing the face of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Was there anybody in that era that like left WCW that you were like, wow, why did they leave to go to maybe to a different company or other promotions? Was there anybody that like it struck your mind that was weird that they left
Yeah, I
that
thought it
you
was
could?
weird when all the cruiserweights left, like Chris Benoit, and you had Eddie Guerrero,
Mhm.
and I guess Perry Saturn, guys like that. Especially when they
Okay,
put the title on Chris, and then he left right after it.
right,
Because he was paranoid about Kevin Sullivan or whatnot.
sure,
But I mean, in the end, they made the right move because Vince was able to take them and
yeah,
elevate them, make huge stars out of them, which really, and then Chris Jericho's in that,
right,
that same ballpark, because in WCW they were only going to go so far because no one was going to get bigger than Hogan because he had, you know, creative control.
hmm,
If he didn't like it, they had to rewrite it. I've seen Kevin Sullivan rewrite stuff as the show's already started because it didn't work for Hogan, so
right,
they'd have to rewrite it where they could get their point across, but also make sure Hogan was happy, so it wasn't an
okay,
easy task. So, but yeah, to seeing those
sure,
guys leave was like, I'm like, oh, they're making good money. They're making probably 350 a year then,
hmm,
so if they came from ECW making, most of their checks probably bounced,
right,
then they left and everything. But, they saw that they weren't going to be able to go to that next level with Hogan being there, which,
right,
was definitely true. So, they went and then Vince did what Vince does. And that's why Vince was so good
sure,
is he could just take something and make it skyrocket, so.
right. And now out of that like locker room of all the guys that were there, did anybody stand out to you as being like a really like down to earth guy that you could approach that you would think that's like a mega star that you wouldn't think that they would be that way, but they were? Did you like
I had a lot of guys like Scott Hall. Um, I knew Scott when he was Diamond Stud.
okay,
We both grew up in Orlando. That's where he was from. He trained at the gym I trained at. His buddy Blizzard owned at Orange Avenue gym, old hardcore gyms. It's all
okay,
steel in there. That's it. Machines. And I remember him calling me. We were supposed to go up to a pay-per-view, and he was Diamond Stud then. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to go or not. Because Vince made an offer to me, and he's like, I don't know, what should I do? What do you think? And I'm like, bro, so that's it's your decision. I'm not going to
yeah,
tell you what I think. But he went and came back and was, went up there as Razor Ramon, came back as a big star, but he was always real cool and everything.
Okay.
He had like Kurt Hennig, which is a big star, Mr. Perfect. He was in WCW. He was a really, really cool guy. Like
Okay.
Big Boss Man. He's a big star, and there. I mean, I used to sit and play cards with them. So I
Yeah.
met. It was weird. Um, when we did all the Disney and Universal tapings, so we were around each other so many days right in a row at the same place because we all stayed at the same hotel and hung out
Okay.
afterwards. So we'd be up hanging out, at the bars, or we had one group that would be going out fishing, and every little clique. But I was pretty much in with most of them. So
Okay.
it was cool. I had had a lot of guys. I was friends with Benoit and Regal,
Right.
and all those guys, Eddie and all those. I was pretty cool with everyone.
Yeah.
Savage was real cool. He was out there kind of you know in a different dimension, but he was cool.
Right. I always say, because one of my favorite WCW wrestlers of that era was Vampiro. I don't know why, I just always
Oh,
liked the
okay.
guy. Ian was
Yeah.
just like, I don't know why, I just was kind of like gravitated towards him out of all the wrestlers. Like, I don't, he just resonated with me, and but during that era, you had a lot of like celebrities come through, right? Dennis Rodman
Oh,
and
yeah.
Kiss and
Yeah, Rodman,
ICP and all,
Carl Malone.
right? Karl
Yeah.
Malone, right?
Then you had Gene Simmons from
Yeah,
Kiss.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. It was. Yeah. It's crazy. Because I was doing a thing with some friends a couple months back, and they're like, all the famous people you've met or talked to,
Hmm.
met or stuff like that. So I'm writing a list out, and I'm like, I'm like, oh yeah, that person. And I didn't put any wrestling people on it at all.
Right.
I just put, people I've met or, hung out with, or, whatnot. And it's like, man, you have a really, like
Hmm.
wide variety of people that you've encountered, and a lot of it had to be do with wrestling, meeting them, coming there and everything.
Yeah.
So it was yeah, I've had my
How
fair share of
insane
people
was
like
it when Hogan had the Hell's Angels come? Was that
that.
kind of a weird thing? Were you there for that?
No, I
That
don't.
whole
I
thing?
think I might have missed that one.
Okay. That
But
was always the big thing that they actually had the bikers come in and be the bodyguards for Hogan for that. That
yeah,
was so out of your time in the professional wrestling. What how long did you do it for? Like the years to the years, did you like try to hold on, or did you know your time was coming towards the end? Like how to break that down for us?
no, I was in it for about. I was in the ring for about 20 years.
Okay.
My son was born, and I had to go out of the country a couple days later, and I was just miserable.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be a father. I didn't want to be. I've
Sure.
seen so many of the guys have no relationship with their kids from having to be on the road. I mean, even if
Hmm.
I was on the road 150 days a year, what kind of father could you be not being there 150 days? You're going to
Right.
miss the first of everything. So
Sure.
um, I was just like, you know what? I'm done. And so
Okay.
I I walked away and said, I did a few things here and there, like local things or this or that.
Okay.
But for the most part, I was like, I'm just done. I'm not traveling no
Sure.
more. And then I uh, ran across, I met someone that wanted to get involved in wrestling, wanted to start a promotion. So we started a promotion, and we were on TV. We started a promotion in Florida called MXPW, and we were on TV. Our outlet went to about 53 million homes a week, and then I was syndicated in some UPN affiliates and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so that was a whole different, because I was booking it, writing it,
Sure.
promoting it. I was from A to Z. I was doing it, editing it. I was doing everything. So what I did is I took my experiences from wrestling
Sure.
and took them and made something down in South Florida, and I took to me, perception is everything. So when people walk in the building, the rings there and the ropes are tight, their aprons are tight, the ring skirts are straight, the
Hmm.
chairs are straight, the guardrails are straight. You have a nice entrance, music playing. It doesn't sound like someone's holding the microphone up to,
Right.
boom box or something like that. And you have the perception that it looks like, oh, this is the real deal. And then the guys come out, they all wearing wrestling gear, they look like they belong on the big time and all that. So, and then I would sprinkle in, I've used everyone in the world um, on my TV show and all that. So it just, I did that for about 2 years, and then I was like, you know what,
Okay.
I'm done.
Right.
It was crazier than, it was like, I'd always do things around the kids where I didn't miss anything with
Sure.
them.
Right.
And then, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to edit, and I have to edit for like 8 hours and I had to get up and go with the kids in the morning and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was tough, but it was a great experience,
Okay.
so it's,
Now, when one exits the wrestling world, right? You go from professional wrestling to what you did. Do you still have access to those guys? Like, did you keep in touch with anybody? Did like
yeah,
anybody
there's a
say
lot
come
of guys.
back? Like, do one offs? Like, do you guys keep in touch? Like, or is it just kind of once you leave, you're out and everyone forgets about you?
No, I mean, it's like anything, when you leave another job, somewhere you might keep in touch with a few of them, some you might not. I mean,
Okay.
I still, from time to time, I'd call the office and say, hey, can I get some comp tickets for someone for this or that? Or, hey, can you send a box of merch down? And, they're real good about all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Like I took my son to one of the WrestleManias when he was little, and I think it's the WrestleMania that the Big Show wrestled um, Floyd Mayweather
Okay.
when it was at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. And because I had to go to the hotel to pick up the tickets, uh, the they had a Marriott there that they took over the whole entire Marriott.
Okay.
So they had a ring in there where they could practice and all that stuff, which was new to me because we never practiced in my day.
Right.
We just called it out there.
Yeah.
Now they choreograph and they practiced from A to Z the whole entire match, which I find to be bizarre. But
Sure.
um, but yeah, I mean, I keep in touch. I mean, Kevin Sullivan, um, he's passed away, but I was real
Yeah.
good friends with him. Um, Another guy that broke me in the business, Blackjack Mulligan.
Okay.
He's a mentor of mine. I was with him until he passed. The guy who broke me in the business, a guy named Bugsy McGraw. This guy started wrestling in the late 60s.
Okay.
Um, I mean, he main evented Madison Square Garden for the title against Bruno Sammartino. I
Okay.
mean, he is, big star. He's 80 years old, and I still text and talk with him on a weekly basis, and I see him all the
Okay.
time. Because
Awesome.
people don't realize that just sitting there talking to them, what you learn, and you never learn everything and know everything about the business. So,
Hmm.
when I had the opportunity to talk to him, talk to him. He gives me his perception of everything, his experiences, and I learn from
Okay.
that. So I think that's the difference between
Sure.
my era of wrestlers to now.
Hmm.
Because a lot of them, I was telling Kevin Kelly, my podcast partner, I'm like, I think when they bring people in to get a job, they should have to take a class to learn the history of wrestling, to see who paved the road for them,
Sure.
to make it so easy the way they have it compared to what it used to be back in the territory days
Hmm.
and all that. So, but
Yeah.
so they
That.
could show respect to the people who
Sure.
really deserve it and everything.
Yeah. Now, when you do other podcasts and people come on yours, does anybody try to bait you into like, the dirt on people? Is that a thing? Like, do people try to get like, you to talk bad about anybody or
No,
did you
I
just
mean,
kind of keep it respectable and kind of
no,
approachable
I
with
mean,
you?
on our podcast, there's no secrets. So if you see
Okay.
something we don't like, you know,
Sure.
I mean, sometimes I say something that I think about someone that Kevin's friends with,
Right.
but this is how we are. We're open about everything. We're not closed.
Okay.
We're open book. So we tell you what we feel. There's no, no gimmicks, no nothing.
Hmm.
we don't. I mean, if someone's going to say something bad about them, hey, that's if they want to say it.
Sure.
Some guys are out there, like Honky Tonk Man, that goes and trashes
Yeah.
everyone. The Iron Sheik made that real famous. Sheiky going out there and
Hmm.
you know, talking about I'm going to humble you, Hogan, and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and so, but I think most of that's kind of gone now. The big,
Okay.
the big shoot interviews and stuff like
Right.
that. They're still around, but not like they used to be five,
Yeah.
10 years ago when they, people would, get a sit down with someone. I mean, um, I had one podcast I went on. They were like, "Oh, we don't know who you are." I'm like, "No problem, bro." I
Right.
said, Google my name. So what's your name? And Google, they're like, holy shit,
Right.
hundreds of pages of me.
Yeah.
They're like, okay. And then they're like, okay, well, then they changed their, so, it is what it is. Was I a huge star, main eventer? No, I never claimed to be.
Sure.
I wrestled professionally. I've been in the ring with the best guys, the biggest names in the world.
Sure.
And there's not that many people around that can say that anymore.
Exactly.
So
That's.
I take it, I take my experiences and stuff I've been through and I share it with people,
Hmm.
you know.
What do
And
you
I
think about the
and I use it
guys?
as I use it as a therapy for me because
Sure.
I've had like over 11 concussions.
Right.
So, that does stuff on your brain. So me talking about stuff breaks up all the cobwebs and
Right.
I remember better and stuff like that. So
Sure.
it's good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like how awesome are the stories that you get to tell, right, about doing it, right? Because you
Yeah,
lived a life that only few people would dream of doing, right? Most of the
sure.
guys that get to that point never even see a real ring. They stay on the indie circle, and you broke it big. So I mean, like that,
Yeah.
how awesome is that experience that you can come back and like talk to me about the stories that you had in the ring, right? And
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
always been a
there's
fan of
not many
wrestling,
people
right?
say,
So
yeah, there's not many people can say they've been in the ring with Flair.
right.
I was doing some research for not much research. I was building some shorts, and I was looking for a picture, and I went down a rabbit hole on YouTube, and I was like, wait a second, that's me out there. It's like a run-in, a pull apart with Tank Abbott and Haku. I mean.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I said, I don't remember that. I'm like, okay. And then
Right.
a few minutes later, and Sid were doing something, and I was out there again, right next to Hogan the whole time on the thing. And I'm like, I remember that. I don't remember
Right.
being in front of the people. I remember doing something in the back because they're real particular about don't touch
Sure.
Hogan, don't touch Hogan. And I was good friends with Sid, because I wrestled Sid so many times back
Yeah.
in the day because I could do all of his stuff. So I was like, um, I remember I wrestled him a lot in WCW, and then he left and went to WWF. And I remember I was in Daytona. I walked in. He's like, "Oh, you're here today?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna wrestle you." I'm like, which
Right.
is fine, but
Yeah.
I wanted someone different, And I was already on the board to wrestle the Mountie, and I'm like, man,
Okay.
that's a night off. That's a
Right.
piece of cake. Jacques is light as a feather and everything. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm already booked, to wrestle someone. And plus, I'm thinking they're not going to pay me twice. They didn't. WWF didn't do that. So he
Yeah.
took me by the hand like I was a kid. It was like took me to one of the agents. Hey, I want to wrestle him. No, no, we really got figure it out. Said we're not going to change. He took me to Rene Goulet, one of the agents, Tony Gurria, and it took me over to Pat Patterson, which is like right under Vince,
Hmm.
And he's like, I want to wrestle him. I wrestled him in Atlanta, and he can do all my stuff. No one else can do my stuff here. Like, no, he takes me to Vince. Like, I want to wrestle him. He's like, all right, Sid, you want to wrestle him? You wrestle him.
Yeah.
I wrestled him, did all this stuff and everything, and I still had to wrestle the Mountie. So there's a
Sure.
tape out there, like I think it was Prime or something like that. That I wrestled one match in the beginning against the Mountie, and later in that same show, I wrestled
Sure.
Sid. So and
Okay.
then later down a few years later, I wrestled in a handicap match. It's on YouTube. It's me and Matt Burns, which is Rob Van Dam. We
Hmm.
wrestled Sid in a handicap match, and Rob talks about it on his podcast and everything. We went out there and did all kinds of stuff, And after the match, Sid came up to us and, hey, listen, it's not much. I just want to show my appreciation to you guys. Gave both of us $20. Said, hey, it's not much. Get yourself some beers, buy yourself dinner or something. I just want to show you that, before the match, I was here because of you guys. Now I'm up here. I just want to show my appreciation, which was really cool because
Yeah.
a lot of guys didn't do that back then.
Right.
And then, he goes on right after that, and they drop the title and everything on him. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool and all that. So, and Rob talks about it and everything. So it was.
Yeah. How do you feel about Rob still going? He's still active in the ring. It's crazy.
Hey, good for him.
I can't. He's in great shape. He still maintained it.
He texted me the other day.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, Casey," and that was it.
Yeah.
So I've known Robbie since we were
Right.
young, back in the first TV that a lot of us all did down in first Universal Studios show they had was with a guy named Eddie Mansfield called the IWF.
Okay.
And that's where Kevin Kelly got his first start. I wrestled there. Blackjack Mulligan was their big star. Blackjack was I was his boy, and he had a school. He used to train everyone. So he asked me to come help them out and everything. And Kevin Kelly was the announcer with Eddie Mansfield, and he got a job out of that to WWF and everything. From there, like Billy Gunn became one of the long riders up in, or they were, I forget where they were in WWF, Smoking Guns, him and Bart, Mike.
Right.
And so then he ended up becoming Badass Billy Gunn. And they had a bunch of guys from that show that ended up moving up to WWF and everything. So, and Rob was one of them too.
Yeah. So obviously, with the whole ECW thing and that kind of going turmoil and then splitting it up, and now you see a lot of those guys kind of resurfacing back in AEW. How do you feel about the day of modern wrestling? Do you think, obviously it's still the WWE's on top, and everyone else is kind of filtering in, but do you think there's anybody that would ever be able to take that down?
No.
Obviously,
you know what? When Vince was in charge, no. Now, there's a possibility because, they don't have final say and all that. It's TKO and they're changing. Vince had this ticket price structure for families, and TKO just like all about making money, turning a profit. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't see AEW doing anything because, man, it's like the wild, wild west out there.
Right.
It's like, Tony Khan, he, billionaire that was a wrestling fan, a wrestling mark that, he used to, he was a fanboy, he would write, he was a fanboy booker. He'd write all this stuff, and that's what he's doing. He had great minds behind him working with him, but he doesn't listen to him. He had Arn Anderson there, Dean Malenko. I think Dean's still there. Jerry Lynn's there behind the scenes.
Right.
Jerry Lynn's one of the best guys in the business.
Yeah.
But I talk to him all the time. But even Kevin, he was announcing there, and he would like say something, and Tony's like, "No, that doesn't make sense," and he's like, thinking, yes, it does. Right. And, so he's like, I just sit back and let them do their own thing. And I said, what's Tony Schiavone does? He said, Tony doesn't push anything. He's like, whatever you want me to do, I'm fine. Right. Gets that pay because he's overpaying, paying these guys.
Right.
He's paying guys, $500,000 a year that was making $50 a night.
Right.
So, making $350,000 a year.
Sure.
Some guys haven't wrestled for 2 years, sitting at home, making a great living. So hey, more power to them. I'm glad there's another spot for guys to have opportunity to make money. But in the same regards, you wish that he would like listen to some people that know how to do it and build it even better and bigger. So, but we'll see how long. He has a lot of money. I don't think he's ever it's not gonna hurt him.
Right. Now, another thing too, I wanted to touch on real quick. How do you feel about the indie scene? Like, Matt Cardona taking over the indie scene, right? Like just not going with a big promotion, just showing up where he wants to show up. Are more guys trying to freelance themselves and like kind of build themselves up as opposed to having a company do it for them? Like it seems to be a lot of these guys are
everyone
comfortable.
Can't do that. Yeah, everyone can't do that.
Sure.
So, there's a few guys that can make a living in the indie scenes. Not everyone can.
Okay.
So he's fortunate enough to be one of those guys that can do that. So, but yeah, he's killing it out there. He's everywhere.
Right.
So, but I mean, indies right now, everything's when the business is up, the indies are up now,
Right.
but also now because ticket prices are so hard to, they're
Mhm.
not affordable. They're not going to the B team towns. They're not going to the B towns. They're only
Right.
going to the big towns. That makes the opportunity for more independent wrestling to grow and flourish. So that's what
Sure.
we're seeing out there as they're starting to, you become, they're
Right.
starting to draw really big and everything out there.
Okay. And then one last topic I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this. You've wrestled with a lot of the guys that were had some demons and stuff like that. How do you feel about the dark side of the ring exposing all that stuff? Are you a fan of
I
that or
watched all of them.
okay? Do you
Yeah.
think they're realistic? Like when they talk about that, are they spot on, or do you think they embellish? Like, what's your perspective on that? Do you think it's because
No,
they only take the weird the horror stories, right? And the all
yeah,
the
I
tragedies.
watched it
They
with
don't.
my girl, and she's like, I really like watching it with you because we get to see this, and then I get the real side commentary of
Sure.
what happens.
Right.
Um, yeah, they're pretty consistent with everything. It's
Okay.
pretty spot on. Sometimes they dial it down even a little bit.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
just kind of
some
wanted to get because I watch them too, and I'm like, did that like
yeah,
really happen? Like, that I know they did the plane incident, right, where they were all on
yeah.
a flight, and it was like, did that like you think did
Yeah,
that
no,
really?
that I heard those stories years and years
Okay.
before all that even came out.
Right.
The one that caught me most off guard that I really never had any clue at all about it was the one about Jake's dad, Grizzly Smith.
Okay.
About him
Yeah.
being like a pedo and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
That.
Grizzly was one of the agents at WCW when I started.
Mhm.
So I worked for him too. So
Yeah.
um, it was interesting. So,
Because I
but
thought the
that one
weird
kind
one.
of
Yeah. Because my one that kind of shocked me was Canyon, right? Being like the first openly gay wrestler, and it was kind of like, and it's like there had to have been
oh
guys that were before that, but they made it seem like he took all the heat
oh
for that. It was weird.
no,
And I
I
liked Canyon
didn't.
when he wrestled. I like,
Be honest,
I like,
be honest. There was no heat for that. I
yeah, they
never
made
saw.
it seem
No,
like that
that
dark side of
wasn't.
the ring for him was like weird because it made it seem like it was like he took like that all on his shoulders and like that, like he carried that burden. It was like, I
Yeah,
could
no,
see it, but at the
WWF
same
didn't
point, it
care if
was
you
like,
were gay or not. I mean, go
yeah,
back
that's
in
what
the
I said because
'90s.
I
They had
loved
that.
Canyon's character. Like they were all great. Like
Yeah, I
his
was
gimmick
with
was great.
him. I was at a show with him literally weeks before he killed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look at it. Look at the Ring Boy scandal, as they call it. Back in the early '90s, and that was a real thing back then.
Hmm.
Where they were, um, I guess,
Right.
you're gonna move up in the business if you give me some favors and stuff like
Right.
that. So
Yeah.
I know for a fact that's true.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I just wanted your kind of perspective on that because you kind of get the backgrounds of things talking to somebody who is in the business as opposed to
right,
hearing these
yeah,
stories. Like it's nice having it come from you, because obviously we could talk all night about all the wrestlers and all the stories and stuff like that. But
yeah,
from your perspective, like doing it, it's just kind of the ideology behind it that you were in the business and can talk about it is pretty
right.
amazing. And
And I
I
think that's what she
definitely
likes about watching the shows. And
yeah.
we watch like a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of these shows like Hidden Treasures or different things like that
Yeah.
because one, some of it's interesting, and two, um, it helps me remember things and makes it better for when I do my podcast because
Hmm.
I see it and I talk to her and I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
like different thing. I was like joking around. I said, yeah, Booker T right there. I used to when
Right.
they wrestled in WCW and all that. I said I used to get him his pot back in the day. You know, take
Right.
him over to my buddy's house and get
Yeah.
some pot. You know,
Speaking,
so
yeah, and you know, you mentioned Kevin Sullivan, you know, being friends with him. How did they
yeah.
take that when he wanted to do all that dark stuff about the spells with Luna Vachon, and how did they were they receptive to that, or are they like that's pushing the issue too much? Because he had some really
No, I
dark
mean,
segments that you
yeah, I
know
mean
those years.
that was in the '80s, and no, I mean Kevin was real good about being able to book heat and everything like
Okay,
that. Um, was He's one of the greatest minds ever in the business, and I was fortunate enough that I was really good friends with him. He lived down in Isla Morada, and
okay,
before my kids were born, I used to go down there and hang out with him. He had a little guest house. I used to hang out with him. Then he moved out to Washington. I guess we became business partners with him for a while. We'd go out
okay,
to his place out in Washington, outside of Seattle, and everything. But no, to answer back what you're saying, I believe he was back then. He was the assistant booker to
okay.
Dusty. So I mean, Kevin was doing a lot of that stuff. I was actually really, really close friends with Luna. Luna and her,
Hmm.
her husband, Gangrel, Dave Heath.
Yeah.
They used to both wrestle for me when I had my promotion. So
Okay.
I would see them on the regular basis, and I've seen like you've seen the Dark Side of the Ring. I've seen every single version of Luna.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen 3 or 4 of them in one phone conversation.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Awesome.
it's no, I mean that was. And the funny thing is, we were running a show once. One of my buddies, he's a deputy sheriff down in South Florida. He looks like that Michael Duncan Green from the Green Mile,
Okay.
big old jack dude. And
Yeah.
I've been buddies with him for a long time. So he came to the show, and he's like, "Oh, I want to meet Kevin. I want to meet Kevin." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, he's the devil. He's the devil." And so he's like, "I tell you a story." He says, My grandmother," she says, "she used to pray for you every single night that God could save you." And he says, "One time you were stabbing someone with a spike, she's throwing holy water on the TV, and the TV explodes and everything." She says so he was like tell him all that and everything, but he's like, "Yeah, she ruined the TV with holy water." You know. So it was pretty funny. Kevin got a good laugh out of it and everything.
Yeah. Because obviously the image that they portray on TV is a character, right? Like it's kind of an extension of who they are, but like
Yeah, I mean, certain people. I mean, Kevin wasn't that way. Kevin's like was a very intelligent person, knew history, World War
mm,
II. I mean, you name it, he could talk
okay,
about it. Big into baseball. He was a big, Red Sox, fan. He knew all that from Boston. So I mean, he knew all the history of
okay,
that and everything. So I mean, he could talk about everything. But you have guys like, say, Steve Austin. Yeah, that Stone Cold is just him, just amplified a little bit.
right,
A lot of
yeah,
guys, the best guys are the ones that are themselves. That's just amp it up some
yeah.
characters out there.
How did speaking of, I know you mentioned them earlier. How did everybody feel about Goldberg's run with the undefeated streak? Were people a fan of that, or were they like not cool with that? Because he
Um,
ran through pretty much everybody. I mean, he was unstoppable for those however many weeks when he didn't lose. Were people a
I
fan of that, or
remember
were they like,
he was doing um, um, Sergeant Buckley Parker. Sarge, he was the guy who trained everyone at the power plant.
okay,
And I remember once um, my car broke down. I lived in Orlando, but I was still, I was still staying at a hotel. But I was at my house. I got out to the Universal, and I was like, I got to get a ride home. So I'm like, "Hey, Sarge, can you give me a ride?" He's like, "Oh, I rode with Bill Goldberg." And so he's like, "Ask me, Bill, can you give him a ride home?" I was like, "Yeah." And so I'm like, "Yeah, Goldberg's been to my house before."
mm-hmm.
And so he was doing dark matches then, and um, I don't think people really complained about it
Okay,
because it made the wave of wrestling go up.
right,
Because those arenas were, even though it was 90 seconds, that was 90 seconds they wanted to see. It's like
sure,
going seeing your favorite guy singing a band and they don't play your
right,
favorite song. You leave disappointed. it's almost not worth the money of the ticket. You want to hear that one song, and that's what it
Right.
was with Goldberg. So people knew,
Sure.
yeah, I'm going to go out there and do the job for him or whatnot. But in the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It matters your paycheck, how much money you make.
Because
So
you
people are making more money because of him.
right.
So
Because you
I
always
didn't
hear
see a
the
lot of people care.
right. Because you always hear the version of the Steiners, right? Especially Scott,
Yeah,
right?
I mean
He was
Scotty's out there though. He's
right.
he, I never had any problem with Scotty. Rick was really, really cool. I've traveled with them before and they're
Yeah.
crazy as hell. I've seen them about kill people driving down the road, you
Right.
know. But Rick's kind of really down to, or actually, those guys terrorized the luchadors when it came in WCW. I can't tell you how many times I walk in, I'm like, what's up with the Mexican? He's all
Yeah.
taped up to the chair, literally
Right.
duct taped to the chair on wheels, and they'd roll him around all day afternoon. He'd be stuck in the chair the whole day, taped up. So,
Yeah. How was it with Ray when he didn't have the mask on? Was that unique
uh,
to see that before he
yeah, I mean,
became?
he was really really cool. Oscar, he's a little guy,
Yeah.
tiny. He was little then too. He looked like a 14-year-old without the mask on back then.
Right.
And I remember one night we went out. It was Oscar Rey Mysterio was driving. He was driving a guy, Hugh Morris,
Hmm.
Bill DeMott. He was driving he had an old Lincoln Town Car, one of the big ones. He was driving it, which he was actually sitting on his knee, or sitting up, holding up, almost like on books because he was so small.
Right.
Billy was in it. I was in it. Billy Kidman was in it. Chavo Guerrero Jr. and a couple more people. And we were at Baja Beach Club. I think Kidman got thrown out, so we all had to leave Baja. So we went back to the hotel, and Hugh Morris was passed out in the back. And I'm like, we're like trying to get him to go. And it's like, leave me alone, leave me alone. I just want to sleep.
Hmm.
And so I told Chavo, I said, Chavo, you know what? Let's open the door. You grab a foot, I grab a foot. Count of three, we'll pull him out by his feet. He'll take a bump, he'll pop up, go to the room, done, over with. He's like, oh, yeah, sounds good. So we grab 1, 2, 3, we pull it. He moves about an inch and he gets up and says, I told you, leave me alone. He slams the door, rips the door panel off the door. And I looked and I said, I think he's fine there.
Yeah.
No one's going to mess with him. We're like, yeah. So um, I'm walking through the hotel parking lot. I look down, there's a big wallet. I look in, I'm like, oh, Bill. I said, oh, you know what? Let me call his house. And there weren't cell phones back then,
Sure.
Let me call his house and tell his wife, hey, I found the wallet in case he doesn't wake up and freak out and everything. Because he had his rat and everything. So
Yeah.
I was kind of playing it smart. I'm like, hey, listen, I found Billy's wallet. Just want to let you know I have it and everything. I'll give it to him when I see him and everything. So don't freak out and start canceling your cards and all that. Oh, thank you, thank you. So I'm like, hey, and I think I was with I roomed with Jerry Lynn and Mike Enos
Yeah.
from the Beverly Brothers.
Hmm.
So me, him, and Mike Enos and Jerry Lynn, we all shared rooms back then. So I'm like, hey guys, let's go to Bob Evans before we go. Billy's paying
Right.
for it today. I used one of his credit cards. So I see him at the match. He's like, oh, thank you. I said, hey, I called and told your wife, but I just played it off. He's like, oh, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I said, oh, by the way, there's a charge on one of the cards went ate breakfast. No problem. I don't care.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
there's a million stories like that.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah. And it's crazy to
crazy
think
back
because
then.
at that era, right? Like, you mentioned Kidman, you had Raven, right? That he was
Yeah,
pretty big, right? With the flock. And, you mentioned Perry Saturn,
yeah.
which was awesome. Like his era was really good. And, I forgot the guy that started the Blue World Order, Stevie
No,
Richards.
no,
And,
Stevie Richards, yeah.
yeah. So like, all those guys back in the day, right? Because like I said, when I was in college, we had two TVs, one for Raw, one for WCW, and you just kind
Oh,
of,
yeah.
it was the thing, right? Monday Night Football was kind of secondary to wrestling at
Oh,
that
yeah,
point.
and I talk about that because the ratings were so big with Raw and Nitro that Monday Night Football almost fizzled out completely. The
Yeah.
ratings were so bad. That's when they brought in Dennis Miller. They brought in a comedian to commentate to try to generate some,
Right.
some ratings and everything. It didn't work. And because you would realize they were getting 5s and 6s, both of them were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge numbers
Right.
of 5 or 6.0. If people get a 2.0 now or 3.0, they're happy.
Yeah.
So back then they were getting 5s and 6s. They're getting like astronomical ratings, and both of them were.
Right.
So that just doesn't leave much for Monday
Sure.
Night Football.
Yeah.
So
I remember it was always secondary to that, and it was
everyone was having like Nitro parties and
Yeah.
Raw parties and
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I remember
it was crazy.
The N64 had come out, and WCW Revenge was like the hottest video game because you could play 4 people. So in college, that's what we played. Like we were playing
Oh,
video
really?
games. Yeah, it was it was a unique time because like wrestling really kind of ruled the world at that point. Really, I mean, like
I
you
helped
couldn't
do
go to
some of
any
those
store
video
without seeing it.
games.
Yeah, but it was crazy because like you couldn't go to a single store without seeing an NWO shirt. I mean, they're at Walmart.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't go anywhere without seeing some type of DX or the Stone Cold and the Undertaker, and Sting was hot. So it was crazy. Like those times are really like when you think about it, how big that really was
Oh,
really
yeah.
kind
And,
of
and
special.
it's and it's cool because I get to talk about my perception. I was there when Kevin Nash took Rey Mysterio like a lawn dart threw him into
Mhm.
the trailer. I
Right.
literally was
Yeah.
standing right behind them when that happened. So I
Yeah.
mean, I was there for so many of those big moments. When Kevin Sullivan had Hogan at his condo in Daytona for the
Mhm.
bash at the beach. He was the
Yeah.
third man and everything, and no one knew. And that's a straight shoot. No one knew who the third man was.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they had Sting prepared to be in case Hogan didn't show up, but then no one knew it was going to be Hogan. So
Right.
it was like a true thing for everyone found out. And he literally walked in. They brought him over and waited in a car and walked in straight from the car all the way to the ring.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
crazy. And that like it's interesting like hearing it from you, right? Tell it like as a first person being there, like
yeah,
seeing it unfold as it's happening, right? And knowing, what's going on and then what's to come, right? Because I'm sure, at that point there were fan magazines, but you didn't really have the internet back then. So that wasn't
right.
like you couldn't really get on and see what was happening. Like now, all these returns, you can go to any forum and they're going to say, oh, CM Punk's going to be on Friday night with AJ Lee. Like people knew about that a week before
Yeah,
it happened. They're like, oh, she's coming back because of CM Punk, that you could see the storylines. But back then you
yeah.
had no idea. It wasn't like you could get
And,
on.
and that's why you start seeing them now. They're trying to work the boys in the back, and I think they're trying to just work the internet and then like the dirt, like Meltzer, the dirt sheet writers, and all
Mhm.
that stuff. So
Yeah, you can see it, but every fan now gets on a forum and says, "Well, this is what's
yeah,
going to happen." Like we know, and then somebody says, "Well,
right.
I have an inside connection to the business, and they told me that this is going to happen." So everybody knows now. There's no secret. Like it's hard to
Yeah.
get
I,
somebody coming
I
back or a
remember
big
once
name.
it was Royal Rumble when Flair was like won the title,
Hmm.
and I was with WCW, and I was in Tampa wrestling an independent show at the Sportatorium, and I remember Kevin Sullivan was there. Pat Tanaka was part of the Orient Express, and Kevin told Pat, he's like, "Hey, tell Nate I said congratulations on winning the title," and this was a couple days before it happened, you
Hmm.
know. So he's like, "Oh, okay." And I was out in Topeka, Kansas, and St. Louis, Missouri, and so for some reason, we decided to go out to get the pay per view at the hotel. And the group of guys I was with were all like wanting to bet to see who was going to win. And I'm like, I think we all put like $100 in, winner takes all. And I took Flair. One of the guys took Berserker. I said, why don't you just give your money away?
Right.
Picking
Yeah.
Berserker. And so I won, but I already knew who was going to win
Right.
because, Kevin, told, Tanaka, hey, tell Nate,
Yeah.
congratulations and everything.
Right.
So,
Now,
but
how
yeah,
was
it's,
it? Were you in there in the locker room when Bret Hart came over, when they stripped him and then he showed up on WCW after Vince took the title from him?
oh, yeah, I was in WCW then, yeah.
How was that transition? Was that everything they said it was, or was that kind of taboo?
Um, they didn't really do any. They didn't know what to do with Brett when he came in, and I
Okay,
think that's why Brett he was so disgruntled about it because they never used him to what he
sure,
thought the potential. Of course, Brett thought he was the greatest thing ever,
of
and
course.
so
But it's always interesting when you hear the story about like how Vince
yeah.
stripped him of the belt because he knew that he was going to take it to WCW, and then all of a sudden he shows up, and it was kind of like it
And
unfolded as
because Kevin, my podcast partner, he was they were doing that Brett was doing that documentary then, right? He
Mhm.
was like the liaison from Brett's documentary to the office. So he was with them. So he was right behind the camera in the back when he punched Vince and everything. So he talks about his time there and I talk about my time and we just have a good,
Sure,
just just tell what we know from because there's our version of how things happen and other people's perception of how it
right,
happened.
yeah,
So we don't have anything to lose or gain from it. So we tell
sure,
we just straight shoot with it, what's what.
right. Now, is there anybody when they give an interview now that you're like you just wish they would be quiet? Like, is there somebody that annoys you when they talk? You're like you don't really kind of
I mean,
listen to what they
Hogan
have to.
was like that.
Okay,
Just because he lied about the stupidest things. You
okay,
know, I can see about embellishing to put yourself over and stuff like that. I get that, but for let's say he wrestled 400 days a year because he considering going to Japan, the time zone, he's wrestling more.
right,
Crazy stuff like that. Trying to say that he was um, supposed to be
okay,
the bass player for Metallica.
right,
Crazy stuff like that.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, my ex, one of my really good friends, he's head security for Metallica, you know, so he's at every show in the world. Whenever you see the what's his name, James, um,
Hatfield.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
big bald headed guy next to him with a headset on.
Yeah.
Big Jack, well, that's my buddy. He's with
Okay.
them everywhere.
Right.
He's got a sweet, sweet gig. He's been with him for 10, 12 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. That
So,
I mean, it's incredible. Like I said, we can go on all night.
oh yeah.
This is awesome. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this, and I'd love to have you
Oh, no
back just
problem.
to hear more stories
Sure.
and
Yeah,
talk shop.
anytime.
Right. It's kind of crazy that it's you lived it, and that's awesome. And again, social media, right? I reached out to you. You said yes. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time. That's awesome. And
Oh, that's been a
I
great time. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'll post this up and I'll tag as many people as I can. And good luck with
Sure.
your podcast. I hope it continues to grow and that it works for you and all your endeavors.
And
And
you know how it is. It's
I know,
a we look at it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
sure, that it
So we
is
just
for
go out
sure.
there and just try to put content out a week, be
Right,
consistent, and it
absolutely.
grows over time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for doing this. I really
Oh,
appreciate it. It
no
was
problem.
awesome. We'll keep in touch. I'll definitely have it again. This was awesome. I really appreciate you doing this.
No problem. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks
everybody,
for
on the
having
One
me.
Fun Guy podcast, Casey, again, for being a great guest. This episode will be on YouTube in about maybe an hour or two after I do some editing, and we'll get it going. And Casey, thank you so much once again. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, see you guys on the next one.